Hello and welcome everyone to our Cannabis Live. We are live right now on youtube.com/Cannabis. This is a podcast and YouTube channel dedicated to spreading the knowledge of the good word all about cannabis plants and fungi. We did a podcast a few weeks ago, about a month ago, where I think we learned the word entheogenic. I don't know. I'll have to do my vocab and go back and get my words down. But we're super stoked today to be hanging out with Farmer Freeman. We're going to be talking all about plant testing, DNA testing, and how you can use this technology to benefit you in your home grow at home or your facilities or whatever you're up to. So, we're going to be getting into that in just a minute. But first off, I want to thank everyone who has liked and subscribed us on YouTube. Please do that, youtube.com/Cannabis. You can also look up Bloom Booster. It's our podcast name up on Spotify, or just search Cannabis on Spotify and your podcast platforms and you'll find us there. We'll have more content and these shows will be coming out through those feeds in the future. And then also, real quick, shout out to TikiMadman.com. Tiki Madman, if you are in search of your own genetics, your own seeds, and you want to grow at home, make sure to check out TikiMadman.com. He's got so many different things, so many different strains, working with some of the hottest genetics out there, the hottest strain names out there. So definitely check him out. We're super appreciative to Tiki. He helped us go to the Emerald Cup this past weekend, which I am currently getting over. I think I have the joint induced cold that you might get after going to a pot show or weed show where you smoke too many joints or whatever. So yeah, we had a lot of fun. So shout out to Tiki. Thanks for their help. But Jackson, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. JR put together a bunch of questions that we'll be going through tonight, and we'll also be taking questions from the live chat if we have any live questions that come in tonight. But JR, do you want to get us started with our first question?
Sure. First, I'd just kind of like to give everybody an introduction to Farmer Freeman, the company. They're based out of Washington, D.C., and they're bringing and distributing biotechnology tools for agriculture. And they are supporting the horticulturist and the hobby gardener as well. They have a flagship product, EasyXY, and that is their DNA-based sex identification test. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight, is the sexing of plants, the advantages and stuff like that. So before we do that, I would like to ask Jackson Farmer Freeman, please tell us how you began in the cannabis space and how your journey has led you up to right now.
Yeah, thanks, JR. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Q, for the intro. And yeah, happy to be here. Would love to tell my cannabis story. So, like many of you, I presume, basically been a lifetime user of cannabis. Smoked my first joint when I was maybe 14 or 15 and quickly realized everything I'd been told was a lie. And and because of that, I'm like, okay, well, what else is there to know about this, And it just became a quest to know everything about cannabis, what's in it, how does it work, how do you grow it? Um, and that led me to actually starting my first home grow when I was just in high school in a prohibition state. Which is it's really tough for a high schooler to pull that off. They love talking, they love bragging, but we managed to make it work. And um and afterwards I came up here to Washington, DC, to study science, and finished that up in 2015 and started my company, Farmer Freeman, directly after graduation. Of course, it wasn't instant success. I had to work a handful of jobs, mostly in the industry. Worked at a cannabis testing laboratory, worked for a cannabis cultivation facility, and then eventually Farmer Freeman grew to the point where it was able to fully support me, and I was able to dedicate my time fully to Easy XY and the sex testing mission, and figuring out what comes next.
That's so cool. How long have you been able to do this full time then? How long ago was that you made that switch?
I quit my last job in August of 2018. It was
Oh
my
wow.
my
Okay.
26th birthday, and I'm like, you know
Cool.
what? I'm over this. Let's take this risk, and yeah, I've been really fortunate that you know, the cannabis community has been so open to something new like this, and apparently it's been working out for them because they keep buying it, and so yeah, I've been full time for about 4.5 years now.
Very
That's
cool.
excellent. Happy birthday to you, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, it's good when people can start making their passion and their dreams be their employment. I mean, I think that's kind of the mission for everyone here on Earth today. Please give us a brief description of what cannabis sexing is, and how one could go about getting their plant tested by you.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, obviously, most everyone knows that you got to grow the female plants. They're the ones that make the buds. During my first grow, we had to seek out feminized seeds because we didn't know what a male plant looked like. We didn't want to have to figure all that out. But yeah, you know, as DC legalized home growing, you know, people started giving away seeds, and a lot of them were regulars, and I kind of just had this idea, like, okay, you know, whenever there's a difference in an organism, there's something genetic that's making that happen. And so surely there's some genetics behind what makes a plant male or female. Um, and of course, I wasn't the only one to have that thought. It turned out that some scientists studying hemp, even in the 80s, were doing this research. And so I was able to kind of piggyback off of you know, the science that came before me, like all scientists do, and develop, you know, what they had learned into an actual product and service for growers. So what we do is we help growers when they're generally at like the seedling stage of their plants. They're growing regular seeds. They don't know which ones are going to be male or female. They'll give us a small piece of leaf. You can see it. I have a little diagram of a plant here. So just a plant that big is all we need. Take that nice fat cotyledon off of there. Um, get that to our lab, and we'll take the DNA out of it and basically scan that DNA for any bits of sequence that are associated with male plants. And if we detect it, then we call it a male, deliver that result to you via email, and then you get that plant out of there, or you take it to a different room and breed it. You do whatever you need to do. Um, Obviously, some people like to wait till their plants are a little bit bigger, and that's totally cool too. We're happy to accept a piece of fan leaf or the cotyledon for testing.
Nice. And now, back in the day, they used to have, when I first started using your product, I think that was probably at least 6 years ago or more, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But anyways, there were smash tests that
Oh
were
yeah.
there. What's the smash test and what's the difference?
Yeah, thanks. I forgot to mention that. So the smash card basically is a thick piece of paper that can absorb those plant juices. So you take your leaf sample that you would otherwise submit to me. If you don't feel comfortable mailing that, you smash it into this thick piece of paper and then scrape off the excess leaf material. And then all you're left with is like a green stained piece of paper. And you mail that paper out to us, and that paper will have that same DNA. It'll get preserved fine, and when it gets to us, it'll be ready for testing. Um, so yeah, we were using those pretty extensively at the beginning because we were kind of scared. We weren't quite sure, you know, are we allowed to be sending this in the mail? You know, we were looking at some of the other companies in the space, and they would have, you know, in their guidance, you know, disclaimers like, hey, don't use the mail, and you got to use cotyledons, they don't make THC. um, so yeah, really it's an artifact of prohibition. is those
Wow,
smash cards.
that's
We still
crazy.
offer them. We still have plenty of customers that use them. We always include them for international orders because customs is pretty tight about plant material. We don't want unregulated plant material coming into our country and potentially causing, economic devastation because of some crazy
Viroid or
virus or
whatever.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we always use the smash cards for those orders.
Nice. And so let's go ahead and talk about some of the benefits of sex testing, especially at an early time in the plant's life. What are some of the, what are the common things that you see as benefits? And then maybe if you could talk a little bit how it would apply to large scale breeding or pheno hunting.
Sure. So here in DC, we are limited to just 3 plants flowering, 6 plants total. You got a pack of seeds, and half of them are going to be male. It's kind of tough. Like, how many of those should you plant? Do you want to take that risk of growing them out long enough for them to naturally show their sex? So that was one of the main pitches that we offered to our local client base here in DC is that, like, hey, you can uh, stay within your plant count, but not lose, grow efficiency. Um, and then obviously, there's the resource saving. So, 2 months worth of water, 2 months worth of soil, time, space is a big factor here in the city. No one's got space to grow plants that they don't need. Um, and then for commercial operators, they got to pay guys to walk through their veg rooms and look for bananas, look for that early pollen sac development. And that's a considerable expense. And then obviously people can make a mistake with manual visual identification. So we help reduce that risk of an inadvertent pollination event. But yeah, we're really proud of the resource savings. We estimate we probably saved at least 1 million gallons of water in our work so far, from people not having to grow out male plants. But you're a customer. I mean, why did you decide to use it?
I wanted to weed out in the beginning. I just wanted to know, which ones were my males and which ones were my females. But over time, I started realizing that I could save myself a lot of resources, light, time, soil, nutrients by getting the leaf tested while it was still in the solo cup. So then I would know whether or not I could move forward with whatever I had while it was still in the solo cup, and I could still hunt out genetics. Because at that time, I was completely frustrated with bringing in cuts and dealing with every kind of bug and every kind of mildew and mold and everything that goes along with it. So I just made this resolution to myself that I was only going to hunt from seed. And so once I started doing that, your services just, it kind of revolutionized the speed and time that I could do that in. I'm to the point now to where I've found some really excellent cuts. Going through seed hunting, and so that was my main motivation. And now, obviously, people are kind of moving towards feminized seeds, as you mentioned before, and auto flowers. Do you see this impacting your business in any way?
I mean, it definitely will have some impact, but we don't really foresee any kind of negative impact. People have been growing feminized seeds for decades now, and people have learned, like, hey, you know what? I like regulars better, or I can't find the strains I want in feminized format. So
Yeah.
there's always going to be a market for regular seeds, especially as the space gets tighter and more competitive. I actually see that being better for regular seeds because growers need some way to showcase that they're different. They don't want to grow that same feminized strain that everyone else is. They want to do some kind of F1 hybrid, a pack of untested regular seeds and find that one gem that no one's ever grown before. And so they're going to need regular seeds. They're going to need some sex tests to speed that along. Um,
I agree
it's
with that thrill of the hunt.
yeah,
I think collecting seeds is like collecting basketball cards, and then hunting those seeds is like the thrill of hunting. So it's like you get the double adrenaline from both. You know what I mean?
yeah, totally. I'm a big collector, and I love my seed stash. And uh, at this point, I'm and many others. I mean, we got a lifetime supply of seeds.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's me. I've just been giving stuff away lately because I don't have enough time in my life to ever hunt them all,
yeah,
and
and
I don't want them to go bad. So
uh-huh.
I just hook people up as much as I can. Now, speaking of that kind of that regs thing, I'm hearing a little bit about stud servicing with males. Is that something that's kind of on your radar, or something you see out and about now?
Yeah, okay. So I haven't thought about this in a while. But a few years back, we read some work on pollen viability studies. And that was something that we wanted to experiment with because, like you mentioned, people are using their males, maybe offering or selling their pollen for breeding purposes. Um, when you harvest that pollen, not every pollen, I don't know what you call it, granule or whatever, is going to be viable. Maybe 30% of that gram of pollen will actually be viable. So we wanted to try to do this pollen viability study where you basically like add some dyes and stain the pollen, and the intact pollen will absorb the dye, something like that, and then be able to provide to the customer like, hey, this batch of pollen is 80% viable. It's good to sell. Or if it's only 10%, maybe you don't want to attach your brand name to that. So yeah, that's interesting. What do you know about this? What do you call it? Stud
Well,
servicing?
I kind of keep my ear kind of to the breeder scene,
Uh,
and I've heard talk of breeders actually having, like, say, a male of some Kim D, or a male of some Sour D, and so that male is something that's sought after, and can sometimes be used as a revenue source, to pass on that male, just like you would pass on a female to a cut to someone, and then they
yeah.
would take that and use it for their breeding projects and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can go back through maybe one of my Instagram posts like 5 years ago. I popped a pack of regular seeds, and two out of the five were male. I'm like, all right, well, let's see if people want this, And sure enough, people were DMing me like, hey, can I grab that male?
Yeah, yeah,
And maybe they were someone who popped some feminized seeds and decided they liked the strain, but they wanted to breed with it, and
yeah.
they need males too.
Right.
Um, so yeah, not everyone throws their mails away, and I think that's nice.
I've used your services as well. I'm a home grower in California. We have a limit of 6 plants.
Okay.
I don't think there's any sort of stipulation around like stage or whatever. It's just 6 straight up. And so I've used it because living in California, have always lived in small houses, and so I only have like a 3x3 tent, so I don't have a lot of space to kind of mess around. And so I've actually the other day I found some Farmer Freeman tests that I saved on my bookshelf. I
Yes,
was like, whoa, I forgot about these.
you can still
So
use them.
yeah, they're super super useful. I've used them several times in the past. I did want to throw in a couple questions for you. So one of the things that's been really interesting to watch as you grow this business is you've been able to expand out into having retail distribution of your sex tests. In other words, people can go buy these tests at some grow shops out there, which is really cool. And then another really cool thing that I saw recently is I saw Capulator posted his Farmer Freeman XY test, and he gave you guys a shout out in one of his like recent um, posts that he posted like a week or two ago, not that long ago at all. And so I'm kind of bundling those two questions together because I guess to me in my mind they're both about you getting out the word. I'd be curious, A, how did you get Farmer Freeman into retail stores? Because I'm sure that wasn't easy. And then B, what's it like, or how do you get yourself on the radar for some of these bigger breeders? Are you kind of going behind the scenes and being like, "Hey, man, you could really use my services," or how did that go down?
All right, so let's take the breeder and
Yeah.
grower question first. Okay, so maybe to my detriment, but I've actually never reached out to any of these big guys. They always manage to find me. I mean, Cap, he just placed an order one day, sent out 100 tests, and he then posted the results, and boom, we got like 500 new followers in a day. It was wild. And since then, obviously, we communicate a little bit more, and I browse his forums every now and then, and we've hooked him up with a discount code he can share with his following. Um, but yeah, I don't actively reach out to these guys, maybe because I'm just like kind of a naturally shy person. I'm coming at all this from the science side. I'm not like a salesperson, so I don't want to like mess up. I'd rather them just come and find me, and then I'll do a good job. Um, yeah, and then gosh, our first retailer was 2016, 2017 here in Washington D.C. So we have a couple of grow shops that are been running a long time. They're staples in the community, and we reached out to them and said, "Hey, we're trying out this new thing. It's really innovative. There's only like one or two other labs in the country that do it. This could be something cool for your shop." And they were receptive, and I really appreciated them for it. Obviously, we made it a kind of a hard deal to decline. We weren't charging them up front or anything. We would set up these cool drop boxes at their shop with these buttons that you can press after you drop off your sample, and it was interactive, it was interesting, and so the shops liked it. And that gave us some space to kind of figure out how better we can do retail format. And since then, we've developed these nice shiny packages, and with those packages, we've been actively engaging retailers outside of DC. Uh, because it's just a self-contained unit, as opposed to, I mean, when we first had retailers here, they were selling the loose little envelopes one by one, and having to write down, okay, we sold Joe 3 of these, and now you just buy the kit. It's got order form in there. The shop sells it. They're done. They don't need to do any more work. So
Very
um,
cool.
yeah, so again, it's all still inbound. Shops will reach out usually on a customer request, and then we send them the hookup.
That's cool. So if you're out there and a fan, go to your grocery store and tell them to get Farmer Freeman. Spread the good word.
Please do. We would very much appreciate that.
Sweet. Yeah. I like the idea of just being able to go in the shop, grab a couple tests, go home, do my thing. And so like here in Oregon, I'll cut a leaf, I'll throw it in a thing, I'll mail it out to you. Typically it'll get there within 3 days. Once you have it in your possession, about how long is your turnaround time?
So yeah, we advertise a 1 to 2 business day turnaround. The past couple of months, it's all been pretty much the next day. The toughest thing is, your samples come in on a Friday. We're generally not ever able to get to those until Monday. Um, but yeah, we're really proud of our 1 to 2 business day turnaround.
Yeah.
So the Farmer Freeman hack is to make sure your stuff arrives on Tuesday.
Yes, yeah, Wednesday for a guaranteed delivery before the weekend.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And this is no bullshit too. He's not lying. I've definitely been surprised when you get the email and you're like, "Holy shit, I just sent this in the mail, a few days ago and I've already got results." It's big, and that's what we're talking about here, guys, is the time saving. You know what I mean? We're talking about a seedling that just has cotyledons and it has maybe the true leaves there, but that first set of cotyledons, you can break off one of those, set it in the male. And so we're talking about sexing your plant within the first like 2-3 weeks of that plant's existence. That's pretty cool.
It really is. Saves you a lot of time and effort. So now I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and talk about viroids versus viruses and what their impact are and the size of them.
Uh, sure. So this is an area that's definitely newer to us than the DNA-based sex tests. If you've been following my company, you've known that we've definitely been one of the slower ones to release a virus test, and that's because we really just wanted to make sure we're doing this right. They're definitely trickier than testing for sex. So yeah, just to answer your question, so a viroid is very similar to a virus. It's smaller. It lacks a protein shell, and that protein shell can make a virus, a little bit more um, robust and surviving environmental factors. Whereas the viroid doesn't have that shell. It's just a single strand of RNA. And so when it's on like a surface, it very quickly gets killed by the environment. um but yeah, they can both infect plants. Viroids are so far have been found to only infect plants. And yeah, we detect them. The we detect sex by scanning for a DNA sequence. We detect the viroids by scanning for an RNA sequence. So it's essentially the same protocol, just a couple of slight differences. And then as we're learning, the viroids can be found in different concentrations in different parts of the plant. So that makes sampling a little tricky. So with the sex and the DNA-based tests, that we're getting a cell from the plant, that cell is going to have the exact same information as every single other cell in the plant. But these viruses, they can be localized. So we got to make sure to get a couple of samples from the plant so that we don't miss where that virus is hanging out, or that viroid.
Right.
Um, yeah. And yeah, viruses, viroids, they're weird. I mean, they only replicate when your cells replicate, or when their host is doing something. So it's some people question if they're even like can be classified as living organisms or not. And if they are, then they would be the oldest living organisms in the world. Um,
Interesting.
so definitely interesting. I definitely still have a lot to learn. I think everyone has a lot to learn about these. The space, the virus testing space is rapidly evolving. We're seeing new labs pop up every day, pretty much, claiming that they can detect hop latent viroid faster and better than the other ones. And it's been interesting to see. We've been slow to dip our toes in that, but we are unveiling a product similar to this, shiny packaging. We're hoping to have a big push in the next month or two.
Oh, sweet.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you give us a go ahead, Sam? We want to
Oh,
know
I
how
guess we're
much.
gonna ask the same question, which is
Yeah.
basically because we actually did get a question too from the live chat. I am looking at the live chat. We are, live right now on youtube.com/cannabis. Like and subscribe and all those good things. But we had a comment from Georgia Grow Guy. They asked, "Are you doing HLV testing or just sex testing? I've been using Farmer Freeman for years. Cheers." They said.
Well, thank you, Georgia Grow Guy, man. I appreciate the years of support. Yeah, we can definitely test some of your samples for viroids, HVLD. We also test for tobacco mosaic, lettuce chlorosis, cannabis cryptic, and beet curly top viruses. Um, those latter four, we've never found something that hit positive. So it seems like the hop viroid is the one to be concerned about. But yeah,
And
we're here. We're ready to test all of them.
And so when I'm buying am I buying each one of those individually, or am I buying like a Viroid test where you kind of hit all of them, or how does that work?
Yeah, so for the past year, we've had a virus trio test. So that's HVLD combined with the Cannabis cryptic and the lettuce sclerosis virus. But just in the past couple of months, we have a single detection for HLVd. So
Cool.
you don't have to get all three. You can save a little bit of money by doing just the one.
Yeah. And could you we don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but I've just been seeing a bunch of posts on Instagram about it, about testing HLVd. So I've seen discussion about how you need to collect samples from several different points on the plant, um, all over, not just leaves. I think even like roots and stuff. You're like, it's like a holistic thing. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So our collection protocol right now is 3 leaves from different parts of the plant. We say the top, the middle, and the bottom. We want leaves that are connected directly to that main stem, that main growth, the plant, not like secondary branched leaves. And we want a whole leaf. We want that stem part of the leaf and everything.
Oh, okay.
And so some old tissue from the bottom of the plant, some newer fresh growth from the top, and we're gonna basically take a couple of hole punches out of that, put them all in the same tube, and then get the RNA out from all of them combined. And from what we've seen so far, that sampling is effective. We have heard recently about the root tissue potentially being a better source to test from. Um, we aren't telling people to do that just yet. We haven't found it to be necessary. Anytime we get a hit on a HLVd sample, we'll kind of play around with that sample, and we'll dilute it 1 to 100, still be able to detect it. We'll take just one punch from the very tip of a leaf, still be able to detect it. So if it's there, it's there from what we've seen.
Interesting.
We did just test our first root sample last week. The internal controls worked fine. So it's something we could do, but right now I'm not encouraging my customers to go dig up, plant roots and
Right.
figure out how
And
to
what
send those.
what about seeds? We were told that it can be present in seeds. Is there a way for you to test for seeds?
Or yeah, do you think that's BS?
No, I don't think it's BS. I think it's been shown in other plants that these viroids can pass through seeds. So I don't see why it couldn't for cannabis. We don't have a seed RNA extraction method right now that we could run. Right now, all the DNA sex tests that we do on seeds causes the destruction of the seed, and it only gets the DNA out. I think in theory we could probably put something together relatively quickly if you wanted to test, a portion of your seed lot for Viroid. But it's not something we've had a request for yet. And we generally only make a new test when it's someone actively
There's
wants it.
demand. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally get it. You guys got to stay focused. I can't imagine there's a army of Farmer Freeman behind you.
I wish
Uh,
there were. Yeah, we're still just a 3-person company. So we've got to, be pretty strict on how we spend our resources.
totally. So this next question that JR had written for you, I wanted to jump in on because it's about tissue culture. And so JR and I, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, we were just at Emerald Cup a few days ago. That's up in Santa Rosa, NorCal. Um, it's one of the biggest weed shows on the West Coast, certainly in California. And we actually, I think probably for the first time ever, I don't remember in previous years, but I could be wrong, there were people selling tissue culture clones. It was really interesting. And in various shapes. I've seen pictures online of
Hmm.
like it looked like pretty early, tissue culture clones, and then and others. So, anyways, would love to talk about tissue culturing. Is tissue culture a service that is on your radar that you're thinking about? And maybe if you have thought about it, maybe you're like, no, dude, it's like crazy complicated or too expensive or whatever. Would love to hear your thoughts about that, especially as a consumer service. We've talked to people in the past, we've done really great interviews about tissue culture, but it's usually more of something that's only attainable to like a real professional grower, not really someone at home.
Yeah, so definitely tissue culture is a tool that's here to stay in the industry. It's used for pretty much every other plant cultivation industry. It's just very effective in being able to make lots and lots of clones at a small scale, small format, minimal space requirements. The growth can be made slower so that they're not you can kind of store them and pull them out when you need to. So they're definitely useful, definitely not going to go away anytime soon. As far as Farmer Freeman's involvement in it, I did actually take a tissue culture class in October of this year, taught by Shiner, who's one of the leading people, social media influencers in the TC space, and that was awesome. I learned a whole lot. We dissected plants, we made media, we put the plants in the media. Um, Learned about different additives that you can do to the media, like antivirals. And So I got my hands dirty. And I realized, I don't think I want to do this as a service just yet. Uh, One of my main hesitations is I don't want to mess anyone's plants up. If they're
Yeah,
trying to get their plants tissue cultured, it's something that's pretty prized to them. And all it takes is, you breathe on that plant media the wrong way, and then it's covered in a fungus a week later,
oh
and
wow,
then
yeah,
um obviously, if we were to do it, we'd make sure to have clean rooms, vacuum hoods and stuff. But um, yeah, it's a completely different ball game than what we're currently doing. I think there's definitely room for other companies to offer tissue culture as a service. Potentially bank strains for people
yeah,
who don't have room in their facilities for all their mothers, or even if they're just a home grower who doesn't want to let go of a certain strain but wants to do something different for a year or
exactly.
two. Um, yeah, I mean that's what I always wanted to do with tissue culture, was to offer some kind of storage system. But after getting my hands dirty with it, um, I don't know, I just think the methods need to mature a little bit, um, and then maybe I'll look back into it. But right now, like I mentioned earlier, we got to stay focused
Yeah,
on what is currently making us a lot of money, and making a lot of people happy.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
I did.
very
I did
cool.
have one. I did have one question about it though. It's like with the tissue culturing for the cost prohibitiveness. Would you say that has to do a lot with the lab labor, the labor you would have to pay your lab techs and that kind of stuff, more than the physical facility itself?
Um, I mean, definitely if it's a quality tissue culture facility, um, they're gonna have to spend a lot of money on build out,
Yeah,
but yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, just the technicians who are trained and skilled and focused enough to actually do that work, they're hard to come by. Uh, the cannabis space still has a big stigma. There's not many professionals who are ready to take that jump into this space. No offense to the people who are currently here and doing great work, but it still isn't as easy to recruit from university science departments as it may be for a traditional ag company. Um, and so sometimes you may have to pay a premium, or you may have to settle with a lower quality technician, both of which either make it difficult for a TC company or make it expensive for a TC company. And uh, so I think that's both aspects of that are to do with the expensiveness of it.
Sweet. Now we hear a lot about CRISPR technology, and I'm not really familiar with what that entails, but I do hear people talk about being fearful of it in the cannabis space. Can you kind of speak on what CRISPR technology is and how it applies to cannabis?
Yeah, so CRISPR is a technique that was like developed slash maybe discovered 10 years ago by two really talented women. And basically it's just a tool for DNA editing. It'll be used for breeding, um, the same way, you mix one and two plants together, you can use CRISPR to assist with breeding. So its main thing is it can be used to selectively remove pieces of DNA, and when you do that, it's not technically a transgenic plant. It's a just a different type of breeding process, different type of crop development process. When you introduce new genes to a plant, that's when it would become transgenic. Um, Neither of which are something that people need to be scared of. I'm a big proponent of GMO technology. I think uh, it saves a lot of lives as far as increased food production around the world. The cannabis industry, I mean, I don't fault people for being hesitant. They've been lied to about the safety of cannabis and a number of other things related to science and health. And when you've been lied to for generations, it's easy to develop a deep mistrust for these institutions, and that sucks for these scientists who are trying to make things better. Um, Having to not just go through the technological challenges, but also the societal challenges of bringing this new work. So one thing that CRISPR has been used for already in cannabis is the deletion of THCA synthase genes. So a lot of hemp farmers struggle with making sure their hemp crops are below a 0.3% THC level, um, because there's just residual THC synthesis genes. Even if you've been breeding that line of hemp for 100 years, like it's tough to get a gene fully out of the genome. So CRISPR can just come in, cut that gene right out, and then you've got a hemp plant that literally cannot make THC. Um, so there's at least one company that's done that. Um, and expanding upon that, there's you can insert more THC genes into a plant, or insert a resistance gene.
Right.
There's just a lot of cool things you can do with selective breeding tools like CRISPR. um, yeah, that's a tech that's here to stay, and it's going to
So in
completely
that in that
change corporate cannabis strains.
right, in that respect, could you make the prodigy of a male and a female to where that prodigy, if it's a male, it is sterile and cannot pollinate your room?
Oh yeah, in theory, for sure, and there may be companies that have already done that. I mean, that's something that's been done in other crops already. Is making sure that their pollen is sterile, usually for the protection of that crop's genome. So, like a company like Monsanto, who's investing, $1 billion into developing a corn variety, they don't want any of that pollen drifting over and being used by neighboring farmers. So they make that pollen, unusable or infertile.
Huh.
That's an example. I don't know exactly if that company does that method, but that's an example of things you can
Right.
do.
Yeah, there was. I mean, this was a hot topic in the weed industry about 3, 4 years ago with Phylos.
Mhm.
So Phylos was doing their like, what do they call it? The cannabis genome project, and they were having people send in genetic samples to build out this like tree of cannabis plants and showing you how they're all connected. But also the Phylos business kind of behind the scenes was taking everything that they could learn from all these different strains, and in theory you could pick out these different traits that, like you were mentioning, Jackson, like one might be more resistant to powdery mildew or bud rot or whatever traits. And then I think Phylos has done this in a couple cases, but on the hemp variety, they've not gone into THC, where they've made some hemp varietals that are more resistant or have some sort of
Yeah.
traits that they've, identified as more desirable. It's really interesting, and it's a really controversial topic in this community because it's a community that there are a number of folks that are anti anything GMO, and so the idea of like modifying this plant that they feel is sacred and all that sort of stuff, it's basically sacrilegious to them to edit it or whatever. But I think it's a really interesting technology, and I appreciate your perspective because I think in cannabis, not all of us, or many of us, I should say, are not aware of what else is going on out there with plants and agriculture. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not just weed out there. There's so much plant science that's going on out there to make your food better and whatever else it might be.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so far as like manipulating weed and turning it into something that it wasn't in the past, I mean that's what breeders have been doing for generations is breeding new genomes and growing them. And the weed of today does not look like it did 500 years ago or 5,000 years ago. And the same is for pretty much all crops that we produce and consume in mass. I mean, oranges, that those aren't really natural. They were bred to be a certain way. And nowadays we have really sophisticated breeding tools like CRISPR. But back in the 50s, we were blasting seeds with radiation to cause mutations and then seeing which of those seeds will survive and grow. And oh wait, this one turned into a lemon. Okay, great, we got a new lemon. Um, so nothing's really like natural like people like to think it is. Um, and so that I think that's just a common misconception.
Right, right.
Kind of speaking of that, are there other plant industries that use your services besides cannabis?
Yeah, so we get requests somewhat often, usually for these specialty fruit trees.
Oh, cool.
So fig, papaya, persimmons, kiwis.
And that's sex testing?
Yeah, so these
Interesting.
plants, these trees, I mean, you think waiting 2 months for cannabis to show their sex is a long time, man. Papaya fig growers, they'll have to wait years till they can actually, manually identify the sex of their tree. So it's a real game changer for these specialty fruit tree growers. I mean, not all fruits are dioecious. It's still only, a small percent of them have distinct male and female sexes. But yeah, we think this tech could be pretty useful for those breeders. We've done work for 2 different fig tree grower clients and 1 kiwi client so far. And we've had requests from a couple of people about persimmon, but that's one that we haven't yet figured out. Another one I want to start doing is ginkgo. So my neighborhood here in Washington, D.C. has a ton of ginkgo trees. And
Yeah.
if you've never seen those, they are absolutely stunning in the fall. They change color and they're just, they're incredible. And they even make maps of where you can go in the city to see them. And but one thing about ginkgo is the male ginkgo plants will make these little berries. They're kind of like the size of cherries, and when they drop, they get stepped on. They smell absolutely terrible,
Yeah.
like some weird, funky armpit or something below deck. You know what I mean? And
The below deck terps.
yeah, it's not pleasant, and they make it in such quantity that they even become slipping hazards,
Right.
in cities and high trafficked areas. So there's certain municipal governments that have written in their code for their I guess whatever departments plant trees around the city. They're like, you gotta plant female ginkgo trees, you know. So we think there could be some room there to assist governments and city planners and making sure that the plants they're planting are the right ones. Um, and see, hops is another plant that has distinct sexes. So we've been asked to look into a hops sex test, which will get really confusing on the SEO game when I have a hop Viroid detection test
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a plant sex test and a hops sex test. Maybe that actually works well. Let's
And I
see.
think the $1 million question is, will you be able to test for herms?
Oh man, absolutely. One day.
Oh, come
It's just a
on.
matter of time, man.
Come on.
Okay, so personally, I think like pretty much all these plants have the potential to harm. Some of them seem a little more triggerable than others. But yeah, so one of the companies I work with, I just talked to them today. If any of my customers are listening, if I ever give you a female result and it turns out to be a herm, please let me know, because these companies in the space, they want to figure that out, and they want your permission to look closer at that DNA and see, is there something there that we're seeing in all of these herm samples, something that's repetitive that maybe we could develop a marker for. And maybe, if every plant has that marker, that's not very useful, but as we learn more about it, there might be things we can apply to the plant or ways to treat the plant to make sure that it doesn't harm, some type of nutrient or thing that you can add, just to stop that from being able to happen. But yeah, man, the harm, that's like my number one asked question is, does your test detect harms? And I sure wish it did. But yeah, we've seen harms from both male and female testing plants. So yeah.
So, we're coming up on the end, towards the end of our interview. So JR's got a few more questions, and we'll be switching gears, talking about cannabis activism, and what you're doing to spread the good word. But first off, definitely want to shout out everyone who's watching live and subscribing to the YouTube channel. We really appreciate you guys. Go over, subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you're following Farmer Freeman on Instagram as well. Really great Instagram account. He's always doing sales and all kinds of cool stuff going on. So make sure you follow. It's at Farmer Freeman. Is it XY at the end, or
It's
what?
EZXY.
EZXY. Farmer Freeman EZXY. Make sure to follow him on Instagram. And what's your website? Make sure we'll shout out that.
It's farmerfreeman.com.
Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
farmerfreeman.com. Make sure to hit up those. But one of the things that JR and I are doing in this kind of next chapter of Cannabis is we're trying to encourage people to be more active in their communities, and especially politically active. And the reason why is we want to encourage people to fight for their rights. And these are fights that are not just on a national level. They're not just us, worried about if Chuck Schumer or Mitch McConnell are going to work it out into the next, safe banking bill or whatever that, F goes on in DC. In your case, DC's local as well. But for many of us, it's also on a local level. The story I often share is that it's the city council, your local city council, that gets to determine if you can smoke pot in your apartment. You know what I mean? That just happened in my town like 2 months ago. So these are very real fights on a local level. So would love to touch on. I'll tee up the first question, and then JR, obviously you can jump in. But this next question, I would love to talk to you about some of the groups or organizations or just activism efforts that you're a part of.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to talk about this. Love to talk about activism. I'm also down to stick around a little bit longer, so that I can answer any questions that come up at the after we do this activism bit. Um, but yeah, so just earlier tonight, actually, I was participating in the Americans for Safe Access Unity Conference. So that was virtual this year. Because of COVID concerns here in the city. Usually they host that here in Washington, D.C., where their headquarters is. And one of the days of the conference, we all go down to Congress together and lobby our Congress people to tell them, hey, we use cannabis. It works as a medicine for us. It works as a medicine for our friends and family. And just please take that into consideration as you work on cannabis related bills, or these bills come up for vote. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about Americans for Safe Access. They're a patient focused advocacy group, which lately patients have been kind of in the back burner of cannabis activism. It's been all about, you know, adult use rights
Yeah.
and who gets the licenses to sell, and how can we, bank and tax their money. And it's kind of pushed the patient rights and patient concerns to the side a bit.
Yeah.
And
I can
so
kind of I can kind of speak to that a little bit because I was a medical grower before anything, and that's how I started, was a medical grower. And just kind of the short of it is, we used to give our patients 2 ounces a month. We'd give them RSO, and we would give them cookies or some kind of edible, and then in return we would take anything left over to compensate for our expenses. And so now what happened with rec is we're not able to be compensated for our expenses anymore. And so we can't provide this product to these patients anymore. And now these patients have to go to the dispensary. They're getting overcharged, they're getting overtaxed, and they're getting an inferior product as far as medicine goes. And so the medical community in my state has suffered greatly because of legalization.
Right, and I
yeah,
just want to shout out to the sorry, Jackson. I wanted to shout out to Americans for Safe Access. I've gotten involved with them here in California. Shout out to local Tony Bowles out in here in Vallejo. He's super active in the California and in San Francisco chapter in particular. And I'm sure he was on that Zoom
I
call.
think he was talking on Monday. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Tony's a great dude, and everyone in that organization puts up the good fight. They're the ones that show up to those city council meetings or whatever it is and make those arguments. Or in here in California, people like Tony, they go to the state capitol and they meet with representatives, like you were just saying, Jackson, and put in the time. This stuff takes time. That's one of the things that I was seeing and learning through this is like when we were when we were making these arguments for people's ability to smoke weed in their apartments, the organized opposition to this, the people that were fighting for against smoking at home or whatever you want to call it, they'd been working on it for a year. They'd been meeting with our city council members for a year by the time they voted on it. So they voted against weed basically because they were already, it was like kind of open and shut by the time it
Yeah.
kind of got to the vote because they put in that time. And so it just showed me that this is a long game. It's not fast turnarounds, and you got to be willing to do the homework and put in the work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they've been at it for decades. Steph, the founder, was mentioning, she started it when she was a young woman and thought, okay, look, more than half the country supports this. This'll be an easy fight. We're gonna have legal weed around the country, and here we are, decades later. and still having to fight hard for this access to medicine.
Right.
Um, One thing I love about ASA is the quality and depth of their resources on their website. So um, if you're interested in activism, if you want to maybe call your congressperson or call your city council rep, but you're not sure what to say or how to say it, they have guides to help you phrase things in an effective manner. Um, and it'll really just help instill some confidence and inspire you to get out there. So yeah, their resources are incredible. They're all free on their website, safeaccess.org, I think it is. Um, yeah, love that group. Some of the other groups that I've been working with this year, Students for Sensible Drug Policy. They are a group that organizes student clubs, student unions on college campuses to help just kind of inspire and cultivate that next group of cannabis activists. And it's really awesome to work with them and just see, now it's Gen Z leading protests and stuff, and leading conversations about why cannabis is important to them and their families. And so that's always inspiring, seeing young folks. I was just with them and some local groups earlier this fall. We were outside of the White House, telling Joe Biden that his pardon just didn't go far enough, and he needs to release all cannabis prisoners. Um, that was in tandem with DC MJ and MD MJ. These are both DC and Maryland
Yeah.
interest groups that are fighting for, the right to home grow, the right to use freely within your residence, among other things. DCMJ was integral. I mean, basically the reason why DC legalized home grow and adult use and being able to give cannabis to a friend. And without that, Farmer Freeman probably would not exist. So I owe them a lot, and I make sure to support them.
Yeah.
Um, Another group that's popped up this year is here in DC is called the I-71 Committee. So I-71 was the, citizen-led initiative to legalize home growing and adult use of cannabis here in DC. But now a lot of those kind of rights that we voted for and earned are being questioned or maybe taken away or transferred to commercial interest groups. So the I-71 committee is making sure to lobby our city council to make sure that the rights that we voted for aren't given away.
Or
So
watered
that's
down.
watered down. Yeah. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on if you're local to DC.
And tell us
Um,
about the festival you guys had with Redman and all the entertainment.
Yeah, so every year we do the National Cannabis Fest here in DC, and the organizer who does that, Caroline, she's awesome. It's always a really great show. She manages to get some great talent. Yeah, Redman, Ludacris was there one year. Um, we smoke so much weed at these events. I'm
yeah.
struggling to remember the lineups for the ones in the past, but yeah, so that happens every April around 420, before it gets too hot and miserable here in DC. It's a great one to come out to. Um, there's lots of vendors selling t-shirts that come with weed, and there's advocacy areas. There's uh, science area where you can learn about THC testing, things like that. So there's something at National Cannabis Fest for everyone.
I wanted to
And
give
it
a
was
shout out. Oh, sorry, JR. I wanted to give a shout out to a couple folks that we know that are in the DC area. I think you probably know them too, Jackson. because I think they're involved in DCMJ. But Chris Furnish, or Lady Furnish, and then Adam Adinger or Eatinger. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name. But JR and I have hung out with Adam and Chris at past Emerald Cups. Adam gave me one of his Phrygian
Yes.
weed hats. It's somewhere in my room somewhere.
The Liberty Cap.
Yeah, the Liberty Cap. So big shout outs to both of them. I know they're always fighting for whether it's freeing people from prison or what have you. So shout outs to those two. I know they're
Yeah.
they're fighting hard.
They're awesome. I saw them, I think it was October. We were outside of the Russian embassy smoking weed together, telling them that they got to release Brittany Griner.
Right.
And thankfully she is back home now.
Totally.
Probably not because of us. But yeah, their family was like, just make sure the press knows that we are not part of this.
Yeah, I
But
hear you.
but hey, we're concerned cannabis community, and she's one of our own, and no one deserves to be locked up like that. And so we were out there. Yeah, I love Adam and Chris. They're awesome.
That's awesome. Good peeps.
Yeah.
So let's see, JR, we had a last couple questions.
Yeah. What are some upcoming events that people can get involved with to kind of help stay active in the cannabis space?
Yeah, so obviously National Cannabis Fest is a big party, big celebration of cannabis culture and progress that happening right here in Washington D.C. every year. Great time to come up and lobby your congressperson while you're here. Other ones that I personally enjoy are CanMed. That's a science and medicine focused conference. Next year it'll be in Florida, outside of Naples. And that's organized by Medicinal Genomics. They're one of the leaders in the cannabis testing space. Cannabis Science Conference is another one that I go to. It's happens in Baltimore. I think they also have one on the West Coast.
Yeah, Portland. I go to that one every once in a while.
Okay, yeah. So I go to the one here on the East Coast, and that's always good networking. Honestly, gene traders events are always pretty cool. You know, I don't ever bring a clone home from them, but it's a great way to just go meet other growers and share some tips and just
Yeah,
see what's going on in the space. Especially because it's often a local vibe. Because he hosts them around the country, so you get different little microcosms of the industry. And then what I've been seeing a lot lately here in Virginia and DC is local grow shops are hosting events all the time. And I think that's great. It supports a local small business. They often will have other businesses, tabling. They'll have bands. Great way to just meet other people, very close to you, doing similar things, and just a great way to start building out a network, and then maybe you guys all go and become activists together.
Yeah, we strongly encourage that behavior.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, a lot of people don't like mixing their politics and cannabis, but cannabis
Yeah.
is an inherently political plant.
exactly.
Smoking cannabis is a political statement, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And you just can't separate them. And once you realize that and embrace it, things are a lot easier.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, I think there's a lot of people in the scene that are allergic to politics, probably for a lot of the same reasons like you were talking earlier, Jackson, in terms of people's distrust of various institutions and whatnot. If those institutions haven't done right by you, or those laws have been put in place to put you in jail, I totally get why you might not be a voter, or at least might be a little bit disenchanted. But definitely we encourage everyone to get active and fight for a change, because at the end of the day, that's where these rules and these things are making that's where they're changing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not changing necessarily from the ground up, so to speak. You know, we have to get those our voices heard and get our stories out there. Um, but to our last question that JR had put together, and once again, round of applause for JR for helping put the questions together and helping coordinate this for us tonight. So we'll hit you with the last big question, and then I'm also looking at the chat to see if we had anything come in, but it looks like this probably will be our last one. So, um, JR, actually, I won't steal your thunder. Do you wanna throw in this last one?
Sure, sure. It's just me and Sam are kind of pushing an issue. We really want to see our culture and our industry get the plant back to the people. So my question is what do you think we can do to kind of get the plant back to the people instead of in the hands of corporate America?
Yeah, definitely. I actually misread your question when you gave it to me earlier. I thought you said, "Do you think we should take back cannabis from corporate America?" Not how do you? I'm like, obviously. Um, but yeah, definitely encourage continuing to disobey. Continue growing it in your home. Continue giving cannabis to your peers and community members. If you have a lifetime supply of seeds like JR and I do, go ahead and give those out, and
Yes.
maybe even plant them first and give people a little sprout and show them like, hey, it's not difficult, it's not dangerous. Just getting more people growing more cannabis, I think, is a big aspect of that. Um, Corporate cannabis is struggling in a lot of places, and it's because of resistance by the longstanding cannabis culture and wanting to do it their way and not the corporate way. So keep that up. Don't get too complacent with the text message deals that your dispensary is sending you all the time. And yeah, keep growing your own, keep it local and keep it tight.
I love it. I appreciate that a lot. I think it's good to hear it from you because I'm sure people are going to get tired of hearing it from me.
Well, Jackson, it was a really great pleasure to connect with you. You've always been a friend of ours and supported us over the last, almost 4 years that we've been around. So I want to thank you for your time today and all the time that you spent with us over the last few years and just sharing such great knowledge with our community. It's certainly appreciated. And on top of that, you provide a kick-ass service. It's super useful and helpful to us as growers. So we definitely appreciate that. We want to make sure that everyone follows you on Instagram. It's instagram.com/Farmer Freeman, EZXY. And then the website again was farmerfreeman.com.
Farmerfreeman.com. You can use the discount code Cannabis420 to get 10% off your first order. We'd love to help you out. Q and JR, man, it's been a pleasure. I've loved to have supported Cannabis for the past few years, and I'm excited for the new direction it's going. I think it's great and always needed in this space to have a place to organize and share and be
Yeah.
activists together. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate that. Well, so make sure to follow us on youtube.com/Cannabis. We also have a Discord server and an email list that I forgot to mention. Both of those links are in our description on these videos. So join us on Discord. We've got several hundred folks over there. Creating a little cool chill place that people can hang out and talk or hang out in voice chat or whatever you want to do. And then, of course, shout out to tikimadman.com for helping us get JR out to the Emerald Cup. And we spent the nice weekend in Santa Rosa, cold and rainy Santa Rosa, but we got to smoke a lot of weed and got some Cool seeds. JR duped me and not duped me, but he got me to buy some seeds over the weekend. So I'm gonna be using my Farmer Freeman sex tests on these because these are regular seeds. The guy literally said, he's like, I don't fuck with feminized seeds or whatever he said. So I will definitely be using Farmer Freeman on these.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to Tiki too, man. He's been one of my longest running customers. He's awesome, and definitely was one of our biggest customers back in the day, and supported us when we needed it. And we wouldn't be here without guys like Tiki.
Shout out to Tiki.
That's awesome. And then shout out to Grower Mo. He said good knowledge and good hangout, guys. Enjoyed it. So thanks, Grower Mo. All right, well, thanks everyone for your time tonight. We appreciate you. We're gonna be back pretty much every Wednesday. So if you're looking for a weed show to watch on a Wednesday night, make sure you hit up youtube.com/cannabis or just watch our past shows and hang out and have a good time. But Jackson Farmer, we appreciate your time. We appreciate everyone watching. We hope you have a good night, good rest of your year, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Growers love.
Peace.